To me, there are certain things that are quite unique to IIT Madras that I don't find in the other IITs that I have visited. Someone today writing the joint entrance exam, and I'm trying to decide which IIT to go to. I think it's important to have multiple interests in your life, both to prepare for entry into IIT and also to deal with life in case you didn't get into IIT.
But it starts with the students having an idea.
Yes.
What if there is a student who has no idea?
For example, in the US, if you look at the annual salary survey, chemical engineers are always number one, number two, or number three. We felt that by going abroad, we could make more money. I think you really should not lock yourself into thinking that you will only be happy in one geographical location or even in one profession.
Some of the things that students and faculty here are doing are sort of like unbelievable to people outside.
Hi, this is Amrit. We are at IIT Madras, my alma mater, and India's top university for people who like to build. We are here to meet some builders, ask them, what are you building? What does it take to build? And what makes IIT Madras the best place to build?
Hello and welcome to the Best Place to Build podcast. Today we are sitting with Professor Nagarajan, recently retired faculty from the Chemical Engineering Department at IIT Madras. He used to be the first Dean of International and Alumni Relations at IIT Madras during a very interesting period in IIT's history. We'll go over it a little bit. Also, if you have come to the campus and seen the new Heritage Center, Professor was leading the team that relaunched it, and that's why it looks like that today. Professor was also in the team that set up CFI, first from the alumni side and then from the faculty side. So lots to learn, lots to unpack today. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. And I'm from chemical engineering.
Yes, sorry. You've written 2 books on chemical engineering, right?
Yes.
We will do that too.
Sure.
Professor, I have spoken to you over many years on this one topic that we have discussed and debate a lot. Which is that all old IITs are good, but there's some differences. And what is unique about IIT Madras that sets it apart? Would love to hear it again from you for our audience.
Sure.
And discuss it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm someone today writing the joint entrance exam and I'm trying to decide which IIT to go to, I think I get inputs from a lot of people, my parents, my seniors, the coaching school, and so on. But I think I would expect that I will also try to make that decision somewhat independently by looking at what makes each IIT different from the others. And to me, there are certain things that are quite unique to IIT Madras that I don't find in the other IITs that I have visited. The first one, I would say, is the whole innovation ecosystem. In fact, the place we are sitting in, the Center for Innovation, is on the ground floor of the Sudha and Shankar Innovation Hub. This place didn't exist 20 years ago. In 2006, when we had our silver reunion, I'm class of 81 from IIT Madras, Professor Chandy, who was the Dean of Students at the time, and one of my batchmates, Shankar Vaidyanathan, actually did a joint proposal to our batch to fund this center. Their thesis was that you needed a place like this where students could kind of get together as a team and do something interesting, something innovative, something path-breaking. And they felt that if they had a place like this, they would come. And so we agreed. I mean, the batch, we were the first batch to walk into a reunion with a 1.4 crore fund raised. And so we did it. We had a voting process, and there were several projects that were presented to us, and we voted. And so back then, I didn't have any association with the alumni activity. So I was, like I said, sitting on the other side of the table. But the Center for Innovation was a clear winner by almost 70% of that.
Professor, for somebody who has never been here, how would you describe the Center for Innovation?
Yes. So the tagline for the center is simply walk in with an idea, walk out with a prototype. The idea was to provide them a facility where they had everything they needed, and all they had to do was bring an idea to the table. And so we give them all the mechanical equipment, all the electrical equipment, all the computational facilities, and even mentoring help, mostly featuring alumni and corporates, so that any student that really has an interesting idea can use the center to develop their idea to the next stage. And from the ideation stage, the next stage is obviously building a small prototype for show and tell. And they could do this individually or actually preferably as a team, and very interdisciplinary teams. So virtually every one of these teams would have representation from many of the engineering departments, some of them from the science departments, some even from humanities and social sciences and management studies and so on. So they will come up and create something really fresh and exciting. And eventually, they will graduate out of Center for Innovation. And so, again, if you look at this building, the ground floor is C5. The floor above us is something called Nirman. Nirman is a pre-incubator. So the idea is every year there's a team that would look at all the projects that had been done at C5, as we call the Center for Innovation, and choose about 10 to 15 to inject additional funding so that they could take it from a rough prototype to the next level of sophistication from a product viewpoint, and be ready to actually start thinking about commercializing their idea, which is a major step. But we are very vertically integrated. I mean, physically and literally and figuratively. So they just graduate to the first floor. Nirman gives some additional funding, additional help, and they refine their idea further. And then the next floor up is we have something called the Gopalakrishnan and Deshpande Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which was co-funded by two of our most illustrious alumni, Deshpande and Chris Gopalakrishnan, when I was the dean. And it's the first time they actually funded something together. They have been huge donors to IIT Madras individually. That center has an even broader mission. It kind of forces these teams to really self-assess. Are they cut out to be entrepreneurs or not? And it asks them to do things that are beyond the technology part. It asks them to do customer surveys. It asks them to figure out if the product they're working on has any chance in the marketplace. So it really broadens their horizon to a large extent. So they have these cohorts that go through these sessions, and if they come out of this with a firm idea that yes, they have a product that they do want to sell and that it will work, then they're ready to take the next step, which is actually get into an incubator. And
Professor, let me hold you. We started this thread by saying that what is unique is this sort of integrated CFI, Nirman, GDC, and I'm sure you're going to talk about
and Research Park. Yes.
Yeah, Research Park, innovation ecosystem. Right. But it starts with the students having an idea.
Yes.
What if there is a student who has no idea?
So I think that's where the faculty play a role. By the way, faculty can lead this effort. In fact, many faculty have also been incubated through our pipeline. So it's not just for students, and it's not just for undergraduate students. Many of our graduate students have also benefited from this pipeline. Faculty have to encourage and instill creativity in the classroom. So it's very important that when the first year students come in, you don't just bore them with theory. You have to let them really think outside the box, when in the classroom itself, so that the creative juices are kind of, kindled. And that is important. Creativity in the classroom translates to innovation outside the classroom. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So from a student point of view, say 20 years back when CFI and all these things were not there are classrooms, where they meet, where they interact with faculty. And if they're more interested with the faculty, if they're interested in the subject, they may sort of work in the lab, or they may have, they may be volunteering in the lab. They may be a research assistant or a teaching assistant. So those were ways to be academically more involved. And on the other side, they could be culturally more involved, like be in sports or be in some kind of a cultural debate or something. This innovation ecosystem is a totally new ecosystem.
So it's another extracurricular opportunity for students. It's not that every student is going to want to spend time here, but our estimate is almost 40% of IIT Madras undergraduates spend significant time in C5 and going through this ecosystem. But there are other opportunities. In fact, the other thing that I think makes IIT Madras unique is, in addition to this innovation ecosystem, which eventually leads to an incubator and presence in IIT Madras Research Park and venture funding from alumni and others and so on, You also have all these other clubs, that really encourage activity in multiple spheres.
For sure, but every university, right? Most universities have that, and especially the old five IITs will have that.
Yeah.
I want to understand from a how this campus has changed in the last 20 years. What role has this innovation ecosystem played? How have people thought differently? How have people behaved differently?
Right.
The choices that they have taken, have those changed?
Yeah. I think one significant change that I see on campus is just increased presence of alumni in every sphere of activity on campus. And I think a lot of that has to do with the development of this innovation ecosystem because many of our alumni are entrepreneurs and they previously would have seen very little reason to come back to campus because what they were doing, first of all, they get out of their core area very quickly. Most of them, if you're a chemical engineering undergraduate, chances are you're not a chemical engineer by profession. I'm one of the exceptions. And so why would they want to come back to campus? Why would they want to interact with the students and the faculty? But this entrepreneurship is now a common thread, which pulls a lot of alumni to the campus in terms of mentoring. You have many, many alumni who are formally and informally mentoring either individual students or teams of students. Funding, many of this center has attracted funding from, alumni again. And the reason is that they were entrepreneurs and they want to see entrepreneurship take root on campus. And I think, you got on the campus, the main difference that I see is very few students now go abroad for higher studies. When I was a student here, almost 80% of my graduating class went to the US for higher studies. Now it's down to like 1%, 2% at best. Many of them the ones who would have gone abroad earlier are now rather thinking about either starting companies or joining small startups and growing with the startup. So that's again a big difference that it's made.
Professor, I think that number is 5 to 10% and
Yeah.
varies from branch to branch. But I want to ask you a question here. Sometimes when we look at that number and people don't have the entire context, they look at it and say, why have people going abroad come down? Does it mean that our students are less competitive globally? Is that?
No. I think it's mostly that they are perfectly comfortable now, staying back, and they realize that India is a growing economy and opportunities are just endless here on campus, and they just don't see. I mean, the reason we all went abroad, to be perfectly honest, is because we felt that by going abroad we could make more money. I mean, it simply comes down to that. It's not that we were devoted to the idea of higher education and higher learning. I mean, you could have done a PhD at IIT Madras or in IISc. That's what we were after. The reason that people go abroad in general is because they find that the pasture is greener over there compared to here, right? Now, I think it's just as green in India as elsewhere. So I would say it's a very positive outcome in the sense that more are staying back. But I actually wish that the brain drain would unclog a little bit. I would like to see at least a higher percentage of our alumni go abroad and make a name, because I mean the way IITs have gained their global reputation is because of our alumni who have
Gone everywhere.
and established themselves. I mean, look at CEOs of major companies around the world. Many of them would have an IIT connection.
Correct.
I think we are losing that to some extent, but India is gaining. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. These 40% of students who are part of the innovation ecosystem, either as maybe they're tinkering in CFI or maybe they're trying a startup or something like that. Do they behave differently in class? Do they have has it impacted the way they think about engineering?
I think it can impact in both ways. I mean, they can be so wedded to their idea, their product, that they don't pay attention in class. But it could just as easily work the other way. I remember, we had a satellite project which was funded by one of our alumni, Krishna Chivukula, who later on funded our new academic
Club. Yeah.
But Professor David Koil Pillai and Hari Shankar were the faculty in charge, and they made the observation that the students who were part of the team building the IIT Madras satellite, who had not previously paid attention to courses, all of a sudden started taking them a lot more seriously because they realized that the learnings from these courses would help them in their project. So I think some of them do make that connect, that if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, what you bring to the table is not just ideas, but also deep knowledge.
Yeah.
because the kind of startups from the IIT Madras ecosystem are again very different from the other IITs. They're mostly in deep tech.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to have a solid grounding of the fundamentals in your field before can be successful.
Fair enough. If you're doing something in robotics or
Yeah.
aeronautics or
Right.
AI, you need to have aced your courses.
Oh, yeah. And you got to pay attention, not just pass.
Yeah. From a faculty point of view, I remember when we were starting CFI, I was a student here from 2003 to 8. So a faculty would sort of look at CFI a little suspiciously, saying that, oh, this is going to take more time away from classes. Has that changed?
I think it has in two ways. Now, the projects that students do at C5 can actually be taken for academic credit as well. So, anyway, students have to do a BTech project and an MTech project and so on. And they can easily integrate what they're doing in C5 as part of that project. So faculty don't feel like they're kind of wasting their time playing. But it also, I think the faculty have started to realize that it just activates a brain, right? I mean, when you do something like this and you do something creative, it does unlock certain portions of your brain that may have never been unlocked otherwise. So at least my experience when I was a faculty member and I have a lot of, I used to have 7 or 8 BTechs doing a project with me every year. I could see a big difference in their work when they were doing something like this outside of classroom hours versus, just maybe going to the library and reading books and journals.
Yeah. Or biding their time till they get a job.
Yeah.
Right. It's very interesting. I want to ask you, when in 2006, when your batch of 81 were looking at these projects, did you expect this kind of a change?
We were certainly hoping for it. I think that we had every reason to believe that it will have a massive impact on student life. But obviously, we had no case histories to go by. This was the first time that something like this had been done at any IIT. And it could have easily, I guess, gone the other way. We could have opened the place and nobody came, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, the institute would have quickly lost interest and the faculty and the students would have lost interest. But we counted on the ingenuity of our IIT students. And I think that confidence was not misplaced.
Yeah. So just getting back, one of the things that's very unique about IIT Madras is the innovation ecosystem. Not just are these 4 or 5 blocks where students can take part, but it has a massive cultural impact on the campus, the way students think.
Yeah, during their life on campus and again after they graduate, because
alumni end up coming back.
And also the students now are more inclined to be entrepreneurs, right? So we have seen a much higher percentage of our students turning towards entrepreneurship now than they did. I mean, we literally think C5 was a game changer. In fact, 10 years after, in 2016, we had a reunion of C5 alumni. I don't know if you were there for that, but this was during our Alumni Day program. And we had about 7 or 8 people that were involved with startups out of C5 who are now very successful entrepreneurs. And they actually came and shared their experiences. And it was very interesting that their bonding as C5 alumni was, if anything, even stronger than their bonding as IIT Madras alumni.
Or their bonding of the hostel ecosystem.
Yes.
So just to complete this part, the things that we missed were the research park and the incubation center, right? So how did those come up? And
so Research Park was created when Professor Anant was the director, and it was to bring industry close to us. Actually, originally the focus was not so much on entrepreneurship, but to bring industry R&D adjacent to the campus, so that you cut down the time between the contacts between industry and IIT Madras. And it's a very interesting model. It's based on a credit system, just like for students. The companies that took up R&D space in Research Park had to earn a sufficient number of credits every year, which scaled by the total square foot that they occupied. And they did that by working with IIT Madras in various capacities. It could be simply sponsoring research, but it could also be things like taking students as interns or providing your employees as lecturers for to give top-up lectures in classes and so on. In fact, we created about 25 to 30 ways in which the companies could earn credits. But at the end of the year, they didn't make enough credits. Initially, the rent will go up. And if they still didn't reform, they'll get chucked out. And Professor Ashok Junjunwala was the first faculty in charge of Research Park. And he was very hard-nosed about it. He didn't care if you were alumni. He didn't care if you were faculty. He said, you better meet the credit system or you're out. And um, so that was the original idea behind Research Park. But we quickly realized that um, like creating incubators in Research Park, and the Rural Technology Business Incubator was the first one to take space. And now we have 4 incubators. We have the incubation cell, which is kind of like a overarching
Mother incubator.
yeah. And then we have the bio incubator, and we have the medtech incubator, and so on. Um, by creating these incubators, you attract startups, and we now have something like 200 startups at steady state in our Research Park ecosystem. And these startups and the industries that are attracted to Research Park set up their own little ecosystem. So the company started making investments in the startups, and the startups started refining their own technologies by interacting with these industries. So this whole Research Park concept, again, has worked so even better than what we had anticipated. We have phase 1, and we recently completed phase 2, and they are all fully occupied, and just a buzzing with activity if you go to
Yeah, it's actually quite hard to get space in Research Park now.
even to find parking space.
I met Shankar once somewhere, I think at an alumni function, and I was telling him this new CFI building is so beautiful and all that. And his first comment to me was that it looks like it's already full. We need a new building.
Yeah, well, that's what happens, right? So yeah, so now the students don't have to stop with getting their ideas um, perfected. Now they actually have an incubator that will provide them all the other help they need to become successful startups. And they now have the potential of linking up with one of these industry partners and scaling up very, very quickly. And so, that the whole flow is going extremely well. And Research Park, I think, was the first of its kind again when we started it. Now I know several other IITs have it as well, but we kind
Good idea gets copied.
well, so we are very happy about that. Wish them all success.
Professor, I want to make a comment, and maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I feel like earlier, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years back, when students joined IIT, they would think of IIT as sort of a step between them and a great job, or between them and a visa to US or whatever.
And a good marriage.
Fair enough. But today it feels like there is something to do here. Like this is a destination in itself.
Right.
Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think now they feel like they don't have to just mark time. It's like it used to happen all the time that by the time the students actually entered IIT, they were just burnt out, and they just wanted to take things easy for the next 4 years and just graduate, because they figured that just leaving with a degree from IIT, one of the IITs, would be sufficient to guarantee them a lifetime of riches.
Yeah.
Now they realize it's not. I mean, you really, just because you're an IIT graduate doesn't mean that you're going to reap the rewards of it. They realize that first they do have to put in the work to be successful after they graduate, but they also realize that the campus itself offers them so many opportunities. And we make sure they know about it, because a lot of the problem is really the communication part.
Yeah.
You can have all the great stuff in the world, but unless your campus community knows about everything you have, you really don't get them involved in all the activities. And unless the external world knows all about it, you don't get the perception points. Right now, if you look at rankings, they're so dominated by perception. So I think we are doing a great job, including the stuff that you're doing, to just get the message out.
Yeah, and just in terms of storytelling and perception, one of the things that's happened in the last few years is that teams from CFI have done really well.
Yeah.
So we have those stories of, Tarun and Swapnil working here, or all those like effort taken in CFI as students, and then they have done better later. So they've sort of reinforced the.
Right. I mean, Hyperloop is another great example. Hyperloop is a big buzz right now, and IIT Madras is kind of leading the effort in India. And a lot of it, I think, started out here. Original Hyperloop prototypes, I think, were still in C5 till recently, and then they got moved to our new campus in Tayur, where the center is located.
I recently visited. It's a 400-meter long Hyperloop track. Yeah, only one in India.
Yeah.
I want to make a comment here. I had this experience because we end up meeting a lot of students who are applying to IIT in these things we call demo days. So I had this experience where after one of our sessions, one of the parents basically there's sort of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
We were talking about Hyperloop, but he didn't believe that we were doing it. So he came to me and said, "Why are you sort of almost like, why are you lying about
Yeah.
this?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, this is, here's a photo and here's what we have done." And uh, I don't know. Do you feel like some of the things that students and faculty here are doing uh, are sort of like unbelievable to people outside?
I think there is a lot of skepticism, and that's because of, I think, the history of academic institutions in India. We have not been viewed
Yeah.
as the bearers of change, right? I think, like I said again, perception always lags behind reality. So I think we just need to keep pumping out the message that yes, we are at the forefront of technology. We are doing things that even the advanced civilizations of the world are not doing. And sometimes it's even difficult to convince industry that what we have here is good enough. I mean, they would rather license the technology from abroad because they're very comfortable having done it for so many years. And they think that it is higher risk to um, trust and rely upon, domestic educational institution, especially. So I think some of these are historical, and it's going to take time, I think, to overcome these kind of mental obstacles.
Yeah.
We have to keep trying.
Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
Professor, you were also involved with the setting up of the INAR or the scaling of the INAR effort. Is it in international and alumni relations? Before we go into what that means, I want to understand from you, from an institute point of view. I studied here, I graduated. Why should I care about the institute?
Right.
How much do alumni really help me?
Yeah.
Why should, like, I look at my friends who are from other universities, they don't have that kind of alumni connection. So it's really hard to explain to them. So, yeah, so my question really is, why should an alumni care about
Well,
the institute after they graduate?
so Alma Mater, by the way, literally translates to mother of nourishment. When you are a student here, IIT Madras is your nourishing mother, and you have taken advantage of all the nourishments for 4 years. And just like in a real family, I mean, your parents bring you up, and initially they are helping you, but then as you get older and they get older, if anything, it turns around and you start helping your parents, right? So think of it that way. I mean, this is your academic mother. I mean, the nourishment she provided you is basically all your knowledge and know-how, which is really what has made you what you are today. So in a sense, it's just like with your birth mother, your academic mother is somebody that you should be, rewarding for her role in turning you out the way you are. So I mean, that's a more sentimental reason.
Yeah.
And of course, there are
But that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, there are nostalgic reasons. Certainly your best memories are probably the days that you spent in campus, and so I think there is a natural urge to go back. In fact, I say that very active alumni show an aversion to adulthood and a reversion to childhood. It's really what it is, right? I mean, and I think so. There's a lot of emotional gratification by becoming more involved with your alma mater. But on in a more practical side, like I said, depending on where your line of work is, there are many ways in which the institute can be of help to you. Certainly, we talked about entrepreneurship. If you are an entrepreneur, one of the first things you need is good people, right? Any business rises or falls with its people. And we certainly have some of the best people, whether you're talking about the students or the faculty. So there is a lot to be gained by reconnecting with your alma mater and taking full advantage of these wonderful resources that they have. But at the same time, you can give back as well, right? I mean, there are certainly students who are very good in, for example, in technology, but they have no clue how to market. They know no clue how to do HR. They have clue how to do manage their finances, and they don't know how to raise funds, right? And these are ways in which you can give back. So it becomes a mutually beneficial relationship. You get back as much as you give back, and so but the institute then has to provide maximum opportunities for you to come and spend time on campus. So that goes back to, alumni institute networking, which is actually promoted by alumni to alumni networking. So at IIT Madras, we have two offices. There is the IIT Madras Alumni Association, which is an independent body with elected office bearers. Their primary role is to build this connectivity between the alumni. So they host all the chapters, they arrange the reunions. So they bring alumni to the table, to the institute, so to speak. And then we have the Office of Alumni and Corporate Relations, whose one of the primary objectives is to then tap into this alumni resource and derive maximum benefit for the institute from the alumni. And conversely, understand what the alumni needs are that can be satisfied by the institute and make sure that the institute puts its best foot forward. And so that model works really well. And actually, many universities, my other alma mater is Yale University, and they follow the same model. There is a separate alumni association whose job is only to do the building the network, the community. And then there is the development office or institutional advancement office, whose job it is to then get all the financial benefits from this relationship and also to provide the better connectivity between the institute and the alumni. So I think you mentioned that I was the first dean for international and alumni relations. Those are two separate activities, by the way. International relations is basically global engagement, working with different universities, setting up student exchange programs, joint degree programs, dual degree programs, research collaborations, and so on. So we do use alumni as catalysts for many of these activities. And they certainly play a very crucial role in terms of giving us that initial toehold, after which we can make quick progress. But alumni relations is something that is, separate. And so I was kind of managing both. But since my time, we have now two separate deans. There's one dean for alumni and corporate relations, and there's a separate dean for global engagement. And I think it's basically the result of our fantastic growth. I mean, I remember when I took over the alumni office, our fundraising was about 50 lakhs a year. By the time I left in 2018, it had grown to about 80 crores a year. And now it's about, last year we raised about 400 crores. So, I mean, talk about a growth story. We've been maintaining a very, very steep slope.
I know I recently saw a video from another IIT, I won't name it, and they were very proud of raising 100 crores.
I'm like, yeah, right.
We've been there 10 years.
Yeah. And similar with global engagement. Initially, it was kind of a sort of a low-key activity. So we used to get exchange students, mostly from Germany because of our historical association with Germany, and from Europe. And we had a few faculty who would go on sabbaticals and so on, but it's very sporadic, very episodical. But again, by the time I left the office, we had something like 20 joint PhD programs with some of the best universities around the world. We had a large number of exchange students. We had programs where our students could go for research internships to foreign universities, and we would get their students coming here. Faculty mobility was just growing exponentially, a lot of it funded by alumni. And but the thing that we made sure is from day one, we dealt with these foreign universities on an equal basis. It's very easy to set up a relationship where you put money on the table and the foreign university puts so-called brains on the table, and that's the mode of interaction. Right from the beginning, we said, no, any money we put on the table, you put an equal amount of money on the table. And we have just as many brains as you have, if not more. And so we made that very clear that we were only interested in relationships where both universities benefited equally in all spheres of activity. And I think both offices have now grown to a point where we are way ahead of, other IITs in terms of the level of engagement with alumni and the level of engagement with foreign universities. And of course, we recently started our first offshore campus in Zanzibar. And I think that's another step in the right direction in terms of internationalizing our institute.
In these departments, what metrics are tracked? I can understand that money raised from alumni could be a metric, but what are the other metrics that are tracked?
So one of the key ones is the percentage of alumni who are in your database with verified contact information. So that if you send them an email or, if you contact by mobile phone or social networks, that they actually respond.
Yeah, so, a very interesting metric. Just the number of alumni who are engaged.
Because once they're engaged, good things will happen. And the other metric that you can look at is when you have reunions, right? Again, what percentage of students actually show up for these reunions? When you have chapter meetings, what kind of turnout do you get? So there are very easy ways of quantifying your success in alumni engagement. But, it's again, data analytics. Somebody has to do the work to track these data.
Yeah, but I heard recently from IIT Ma, who now have given us these Davara cups to put in our set.
Yeah.
You can buy them from their shop. Uh, I heard that they're about to open 50 chapters. Like now there are about 50 active chapters. That's a lot.
Well, that's globally, right? I think certainly, given our alumni and how scattered they are around the world, doesn't surprise me. I mean, the US itself can support at least 8 chapters. India can, of course, support even more.
Yeah, I mean, some chapters are bigger and some. I heard recently
Yeah,
that they have opened a chapter in Dehradun, which is obviously a smaller chapter than, say, Bangalore.
a chapter is just an excuse to bring local alumni together, right? So, when you talk about a broad worldwide network, it's actually comprised of micro networks that have to exist at local levels, because then these networks can network among themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it. You cannot just start with a global entity and expect everyone to jump in. And again, the alumni have to see the benefit, right? Why would they come to a chapter meeting, right? That's a question that's frequently posed to me, because other institutions that I've visited say they have chapter meetings, but they get very, very few alumni to turn up. So I tell them that every chapter meeting has to provide value to the alumni. For example, you could bring in a keynote speaker, and he or she doesn't even have to be an alumnus, but they will be the drawing card that brings people in. And also, you have to alternate between events only for alumni and events for families. You have to make sure that alumni families are also part of this broader community.
Yeah.
Because the spouse, whether it's a male spouse or female spouse, can play a key role both in terms of how much time they allow you to spend in alumni activities and also how much money you want to give. So it's very important to make them feel like they're also part of the IIT family.
Fair enough. So from a student joining point of view, the main input here is that the alumni network for IIT Madras is really strong, very engaged.
Exactly.
And at some point in your life, you're going to tap into this network for mentoring or advice or maybe a job or maybe some money that you're going to raise.
Right. And eventually you'll reach a stage where you will give back, and it just will make you feel good.
Thank you so much. That's a lot. Professor, can we dial back?
Yeah.
And can we talk a little bit about yourself? Where did you come from? And I know you've spoken about it elsewhere, but just for...
Sure. So actually, I graduated from a Tamil medium school in a small town called Manadgudi, which is in the Kaveri Delta. And I did come 7th in the state. So I guess I had the brains, but otherwise I was sort of unprepared for entering an IIT. Because we only had one transition year at that time. So up to SSLC you do in school, and then you have a pre-university, which is 1 year that you spend in a college. And during that time, you also have to be preparing for your joint entrance exam, which was a one-stage exam at that time, not a two-phase exam. And so there's a lot to kind of digest and deal with, coming from a very rural environment to a city environment. I mean, okay, the brains, let's assume you have, but then there's also the English factor.
Yeah.
And certainly that can be intimidating. And it's very difficult to just learn English by reading textbooks or by whatever instruction you get in your school or college. The reason that I think I was able to make that transition was because I was a huge movie fan, and I used to watch a lot of movies and English movies. And it helps in multiple ways, not just the English, but also just feeling like you are aware of what's going on around you, that cultural awareness, that global savvy, all of that you get. I mean, when I came to Chennai and I enrolled in Vivekananda College, most of my classmates were actually from the city, like schools like Padma Seshadri and Vidya Mandir and so on. And they had these cliques, and they used to have these conversations which excluded everybody else. It could be very intimidating. And a lot of preparing for JE is mental, psychological. So if you don't have that self-confidence that you can compete with these guys, you've already kind of lost the battle. I think what, for me, leveled the playing field was that I was watching the same movies they were. I'm also a huge avid reader, which has now translated into more writing as well. So again, I could easily, connect with them as far as what kind of fiction they were reading and so on. And music, those were the three, I would say, external factors that could be very easily used to put you down, so to speak. In fact, I remember one memory. In pre-university, we had English, and the instructor, one of the assignments was we had to take a poem, critique it, and come back and read your critique of the poem. So I did that, and I read my critique, and all these guys, many of these guys stood up and said he couldn't have written it himself. He must have had help from somebody. I mean, talk about a bittersweet memory, right? I mean, at that time, I didn't know how to deal with it. I was too young. I stuttered, I stammered. I said, no, I wrote it myself, which probably made it even less convincing. So even the instructor turned to me and said, you shouldn't take help from others. But it made me realize that a lot of this is going to be this social pressures on you. And the way I think, again, I got over it was just becoming more and more tuned into what was going on around me. So I think it's very important. It's not enough if you just read up for JEE. You have to make sure that you stay connected to the world around you. Back then we didn't have these residential coaching schools, and JEE was just something else you prepared. I think they had one class after hours for like an hour at Vivekananda College that you could attend if you wanted to, but nothing more serious than that. So the JEE was not the all-consuming, effort that it is today. So I think it enabled us. I mean, even the week before the JEE exam, I was going to movies and reading books and stuff like that. So I was able to, even if I hadn't got through, it wouldn't have killed me. I would have just looked for other opportunities. And in fact, I wanted to do my MA in English literature. That was my dream. And I was kind of disappointed when I got into IIT. But I think it's important to have multiple interests in your life, both to prepare for entry into IIT and also to deal with life in case you didn't get into IIT.
This is I mean, thank you for sharing so much. But I just want to say that this is such a like a contemporary, no, not a contemporary, like it happens every year, right? It's a timeless story where you have this feeling that you have reached somewhere, you have some competencies, you are included in some spaces, but you're excluded in other
Anyways, it has
spaces.
become worse now in a sense because, at least in our time, 90% of the students entering IITs were from the city. They were from metros.
Yeah.
Now it's the other way around. I think almost 70% of our incoming class is from, outside the cities, because anybody can go to a coaching school and learn, right? So it's great in a way. A lot of people blame coaching factories for a lot of ills, but I think they have absolutely, it's level the playing field. But that means that all these students that are coming from rural environments may be even weaker in English and other social skills compared to the students from the cities. So they're going to have trouble, I think, after they enter IIT, and we do see that with our first year students. But also they're going to have trouble preparing for JEE because they have to deal with all these other influences apart from the studies that they have to do.
Just to clarify, you're not talking only of language skills, you're talking of language and social
skills are very important because it prepares you mentally, right? If you feel isolated, it's not going to put you in the right frame of mind to prepare. I think that's what causes a lot of these depression-related issues, that feeling of isolation.
Thank you for sharing. So then you were a BTech here, and then you went to the US. I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
Why did you decide to come back?
Actually, I was very happy there. I did my PhD at Yale, then I did a year and a half as postdoc at a university, actually working with the Department of Energy. And then I got this call from IBM, and they said, we want you to come and join us and still do chemical engineering. And by the way, chemical engineering is a fantastic and very versatile discipline. I should do some sales for my parent department as well. But, chemical engineers are really process engineers. So in any business that runs a process, chemical engineers are in huge demand. And so IBM wanted me, even though I had all my work had been in coal combustion, and I had no idea why IBM wanted me. But it turned out that what they really wanted was my expertise in particulate science and technology. So that's the reason I migrated to IBM in San Jose, and I worked with them for 15 years, moved rapidly through the ranks, very successful, very happy, and very settled. But, just personal stuff. My mother passed away in 1996, and then my father had some difficulties with his health. He's a lawyer. He's 94, still practicing.
What?
He still has clients who come and see him now that we are here. But we tried to get him to come and live with us in the US, and he couldn't take it. He got very restless and so on. So in 2003, we moved back to India so that he could live with us. And applied to IIT Madras and got, so IIT had advertised for professor level openings at the time. So I applied, and interestingly, they called me to interview as an associate professor because I didn't have any academic experience at the time, except the couple of years I had spent at West
As a
Virginia
postdoc.
University. But after the interview, they offered me a professor position. So things worked out well. But the only reason I would say is because of family kind of things. It's not that I think the US is a wonderful place to work. It's a wonderful place to bring up your families. So we had no issues. It's not that we wanted our kids to grow up in India. I think wherever they grow up, it's how they model themselves after their parents, right? So as long as you are leading a good life, they will also. So we had no concerns on that score. So, but I think, no regrets either. I think I've had a wonderful time in the last 20 years as a professor at IIT Madras. And even now after retirement, I'm keeping myself very busy doing a lot of different things. And I don't think I would have had any regrets if I had continued to live in the US. So I think you really should not lock yourself into thinking that you will only be happy in one geographical location or even in one profession. You have to, leave yourself an out because things are not always going to work out the way you plan. I mean, we had no idea that we'll be coming back to India in 2003. We had planned for basically a lifetime abroad, like many IIT Madras alumni of our time. But, we were able to roll with the change, so to speak, because we were prepared for it mentally.
Yeah, some amount of fluidity is required in one
Absolutely.
career.
Yeah. You never know what the next year is going to bring, let alone 20 years from now. So definitely. And things are even more fluid now. And it's also a much more, global economy, right? So it's just as easy to stay where you want to stay and work where you want to work. All those possibilities exist. The two do not necessarily go together anymore.
Professor, you mentioned something about selling your department. What is chemical engineering broadly about? And why do people still ask, is chemical engineering safe for women?
Oh, that's interesting because, as I mentioning earlier, the statistics are that chemical engineering is the second most preferred discipline for girls after biotechnology. If you look at the percentage of students who enter chemical engineering as undergraduates who are girls. And by the way, at the postgraduate level, it's even higher. Almost 50% of our PhD students are female. So, I mean, chemical engineering, I think, is regarded actually as a fairly safe profession for women. Um, because it has that somewhat of a soft connotation. I think mechanical engineering kind of is very forbidding for women just from the name. Chemical engineering, I think, is a lot more user friendly. And by the way, the curriculum in chemical engineering, we always felt was much more liberal than most of the other disciplines. And, chemical engineering has a lot of versatility built into it. When I was the head of the department and I interacted with first year students, I asked them, what do you think is chemical engineering? And they'll tell me it's chemistry. It's basically application of chemistry. And I just was just blown away. In fact, chemical engineering has more to do with physics than chemistry, by the way. But they didn't know, right? Because I come from schools and they only know chemistry and they see chemical engineering. They think the two are very closely allied. So one of the first courses that I reintroduced was an introduction to chemical engineering course, where every week I had a faculty member or an industry person come and talk about what they were doing and how it related to chemical engineering. That I think enabled the first year students to quickly see that chemical engineering is just a vast field and it has, I mean, for example, data science, right? I mean, it's a huge thing these days, data science, AI, and so on. But it's always been a traditional chemical engineering course, right? I mean, chemical engineering has, we used to, this whole data analytics, we used to kind of look down upon and call it black box modeling. You don't need to know anything about the process. You just monitor the input and the output and you know the process, which I don't think is a smart thing to do, but but at least we had a pretty good idea of this, and because the focus was so much on processes, like I mentioned earlier, so we had courses in process modeling, process simulation, process analysis, process control, process optimization. So by the time you go through a chemical engineering program, you're well versed in all aspects of process, including definitely data analytics and feedback to the process in order to improve it and so on. In fact, when I was with IBM, I went to that software lab at one time, and a fairly large number of managers were chemical engineers. So I asked one of them, how come? And he said, IBM thinks chemical engineers are best equipped to deal with processes in general, whether it's a chemical process or whether it's coding. A process is a process. And they feel that the chemical engineering curriculum has the maximum number of courses and training that's related to managing a process. And that's why they love to have chemical engineers as process managers. So I think the way to think about chemical engineering is it has nothing to do with chemicals. It can, but it has it's not restricted to chemistry, but it can be. But it pretty much I would say it delves into every aspect of your life, right? I mean, any commercial product that you see around you has been commercially manufactured, right? Whether it's soaps or detergents or whatever. And there is chemistry involved, but there is also, more importantly, the process of making the product. And that's where I think chemical engineers now bring maximum value add. And that's why those skills are very transferable. And if you look, for example, in the US, if you look at the annual salary survey, chemical engineers are always number one, number two, or number three. It's usually petroleum engineering and chemical engineering that kind of switch places. And of course, petroleum engineering is also kind of part of chemical engineering. So unfortunately, in India, that there seems to be sort of a negative connotation around chemical engineering. But I think now the core chemical engineering branches seem to be making a comeback. Yeah. So I think chemical will reposition itself, and also all this emphasis on green processes, environmental protection, and so on. Chemical engineers have a lot to contribute. I think that's an area where we can focus also.
Yeah. I think the industry, the innovation in industry in India is also growing significantly. So a lot more processes that we are building ourselves.
Sure.
Earlier, a lot of the processes were just imported.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if somebody is asking, is it safe for girls? They may be thinking that it's chemistry.
Right.
I wouldn't know why that's unsafe for girls, but still.
Yeah. I think their experience with chemistry lab in school maybe. And by the way, a lot of the efforts that IITs are now doing is to reach out to schools and make sure that, when the kids are in school, that's the time you need to let them know, I think, about making informed career choices.
Yeah.
And so I think it is important for the engineering departments to go to schools and inform them a little bit about what their engineering is about. So we have to do more homework, so to speak.
One question comes to mind is, if it's not to do with chemistry, why is it called chemical engineering?
I think when chemical engineering was originally started as a discipline, they wanted to differentiate it from other branches of engineering. And a lot of the early engineering work was in chemical industries, and that's where the name came from. It doesn't, again, necessarily have to do with chemistry, because chemistry is only one ingredient, right? I mean, if you're making a soap, right, you need the chemistry to make sure that it can remove contaminants and surfaces and so on. But then how do you put the product together? How do you manufacture the product? So I think it was an early differentiator, but actually we could rename chemical engineering as process engineering, and it'll be much more apt than chemical engineering.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much. As you were mentioning it, I recall that you're also an author of 2 books in chemical engineering.
Yes. And an award-winning short story, which was actually in a Mills Boon short story writing competition, my first foray into romantic fiction, and it got the runner-up prize in India. So very proud of my story. And it actually got me much more fame than anything I've done as a chemical engineer.
Yeah, I've always wondered. Of course, I've read this and we spoke about it earlier, but how did it come about?
Well, I mean, I kind of write stories all the time. Okay. Just something that I do as an outlet for my creativity. And I publish some of them. Some of them I just circulate among family and friends. But no, I mean, my principal interests are actually in mystery, suspense, humor, science fiction, horror. So this was more of a challenge to me, when the Mills Boon announced this competition. I just wanted to challenge myself and see if I step out of my comfort zone, can I actually write a romantic story? As it turned out, it did quite well. And although it was more humor than romance, but I think, again, you should be looking constantly for outlets for your creativity, because like I said, there are different regions in your brain that need to be constantly activated. In fact, I remember Professor Anant once saying that, Indian education depends a lot on memorization. It used to, right? And even like our prayers, everything, you memorize large volumes of text and then you try to recite. You always look at that as a negative and say that, this regurgitation of memorized stuff is not good for you. But actually, it does help. If you do brain analysis, and maybe we should in our brain center, memorization also does activate certain regions of your brain that would not be otherwise activated. So I do think that, Indian education systems have a lot going for them.
Professor, I've lost the link. We were talking about your romance writing.
Right.
I wanted to, and then we moved to Indian education system. So I lost the link.
Yeah.
But this was the Mills Boon's national competition for romance writing,
Right.
right? This is in 2009, 2000.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, belated congratulations. Are you going to be writing more now
I
that?
certainly hope so. Now that I have no more excuses, I always used to say I'm too busy to write, but now that I'm retired, but I'm finding I'm still very busy. But I do have ideas for. I mean, short stories are easy. I would really like to try and attempt a longer work. But by the way, I'm only interested in fiction. I refuse to read nonfiction. I refuse to watch documentaries. I only watch theatrical movies, and I only read fiction. The more pop it is, the better. So I certainly have some ideas in my head, but
What are the kind of authors and movies that you read and watch?
well,
Like if you were to give like my favorite top 5.
yeah, I think it's a usual list. I think, for example, I have instituted this award called the WAC Award here, right? I mean, it's for students to write short stories in the realms of humor, mystery, suspense, and science fiction. It's called the WAC Award because it stands for probably my 3 favorite authors. W for Woodhouse, A for Isaac Asimov, and C for Agatha Christie. In fact, I want to make it a WAC Award, WACK, because my 4th favorite author in the horror regime is Stephen King. So, I mean, those 4, I would say, are probably up there among my favorite authors. But I also love the hair. The spy fiction is another genre that fascinates me. And, I'm doing a lot of, by the way, I finally read the Harry Potter series. My daughter has been after me to do that. So just
How old
days ago, how old is your daughter? Well, she's now 27.
So how long has she spent there?
I think 12, 15 years. And finally, I sat down and they were pretty good.
Okay.
It's that, so right now, I'm in a phase of rereading a lot of my favorites.
I want to, and the last thread of conversation, I know I've occupied you for a long time. Last thread of conversation is that you were also involved in renovating the Heritage
Yeah.
Center, and clearly you care about heritage a lot. And I've heard you speak about it. We've all seen the Heritage Center. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Heritage Center has been actually in operation since 2006. And I think IIT Madras was the first to set up a Heritage Center. And it basically houses a lot of the history of the institute, how it came about, particular focus on the German links, because, that's how Madras was originally launched, with a lot of assistance from Germany in terms of people as well as equipment and so on. But there's also a focus on contemporary things. For example, we had these display boards of our distinguished alumni. We give out distinguished alumni awards every year. I think out of 70,000 alumni, we still have only about 220 distinguished alumni. So they used to celebrate them in our Heritage Center. So, but when I looked at it, after I became faculty in charge of Heritage Center, we took a lot of feedback from visitors. And what they said is, it's a nice place, but there's no wow factor, that will draw me back to Heritage Center, that will make me come to Heritage Center whenever I get a visitor from out of town. So we sat down and actually did a lot of brainstorming to look at what will make it a place that will be like the happening place on campus. The first place people start from, the place that the director would bring visitors to, if they really wanted to blow them away.
Yeah.
And so we created we redesigned, reimagined the Heritage Center based on basically input from the visitors that we have, which is, mostly alumni, but we also have prospective students and their families. We have current students. We have campus residents. We have international delegations from universities as well as, from governmental organizations. And we have visits from other institutes in India. So we had to design a place that would cater to all of them and satisfy what they were looking for. So the design that we came up with was almost like an apple with its core in the center and then slices. So at the center we have this hall that we use for revolving exhibits. So every
Like a spotlight.
yes, so we could spotlight something. For example, we have spotlighted the R2D2, the Center for Rehabilitation Research and Device Development by Dr. Sujata in mechanical engineering. And so, but these things change every few weeks. Like I said, we don't want them to become static. But around this core, we have essentially a time sequence of things that happen to IIT Madras. So if you enter and you go left, the first thing you come up against is all of our German history. And again, we try to make it very interactive. So, for example, we have AR as part of the display. So you could actually just flash your mobile phone at an exhibit, and you'll get a video and a narrative about what that exhibit is. And mostly, and also you have several video exhibits. For example, Nehru and Indira Gandhi visiting Germany when the idea was first mooted. And then we kind of, as you keep going around, we'll move into more modern times, how the first IIT Madras campus was set up and the first hostels were created, and then how the academic program shaped up, the early emphasis on workshop and drawing. I mean, when I was a student, we used to have alternating weeks. 1 week, all you do is workshop. And then the next week you have classes. I'm sure you've heard about it.
Yeah.
You literally sit and file something for a week and you don't even get a break except for lunch, right? And drawing. All engineering students had to take 4 semesters of engineering drawing, which was my weakest subject, by the way.
It was my strongest. Sorry, I had to mention that.
So we kind of step through that, and then we then come to the more modern times of how there is increasing emphasis on research, increasing emphasis on entrepreneurship and innovation, and the campus itself. We think we have a wonderful campus. It's a nature preserve, it's a wildlife refuge, and we want to celebrate that. And so we have exhibits that do that around the Heritage Center, and we have state-of-the-art theater. Again, funded by an alumnus, with the latest in projection technology and sound system. And we have made a really nice movie, short version and a long version called IIT Madras Journey to Eminence, which, many of our visitors start with. And it gives them a kind of an overall perspective on how IIT Madras developed from its beginnings to where it is today. So I think the Heritage Center is now, of course, the IIT Madras Alumni Association gift shop is also located in the Heritage Center. You can always buy these souvenirs, but so it's a great place for people to start that journey into IIT Madras. And we have these golf carts that can then take them around the campus and show them the various landmarks on campus. I think it's really made a big difference to the campus in terms of enhancing the visitor experience, but also our own students and faculty now spend quite a bit of time there. And we always like to see that. We encourage faculty to bring their visitors to the Heritage Center. Instead of talking to them about IIT Madras, this is a place where you can show them everything about it. And
one thing I've noticed is that a lot of students do take their parents also.
Yes.
And when you go to an institute like this, which is a residential institute, your parents do feel a little like uninvolved, distant, and it does bring them closer to, okay, this is where my child is studying. This is what the history of that place is.
And I think it's especially good for prospective students. So I think any student that's writing a JEE should be asked to come and spend some time in Heritage Center, so that, because there's no comparable facility anywhere else even now.
That's so cool, Professor. We spoke about, we started with the Innovation Center, the CFI, and we sort of did a full turn and came to the Heritage Center. Professor, in the Heritage Center website, there are also a lot of interviews you have done, talking to Professor Anand and the other professors who have been there for a long time. As an interviewer, how do you think I did?
Oh, I think you did great. I think, as I was saying earlier, the primary requirement for an interviewer or a panel moderator is to keep quiet as much as possible and let the interviewee and the panelists do most of the talking. So I think the way you should assess yourself is look at the percentage of time you talk versus the percentage of time that the interviewee or the panelists talk. And if you're less than 10%, you're doing great. And I do think, of course, that, especially in a one-on-one interview, you have to provide the interaction so that, it becomes something that's more dynamic. And I think you did very well.
Professor, I have ticked off everything off my list. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to cover that I missed out?
No, I don't think so. I think, we can always keep talking, right? As you know, faculty love to talk, and they almost get paid by the word in a way. But I think I see a lot of enthusiasm and energy among young alumni like yourself to help the institute in various ways. And I hope that, the seeds we have planted in terms of nurturing alumni relations continue to take hold and benefit the alma mater. Remember, alma mater, nourishing mother. And hopefully that gives you that, an alumnus an incentive And to prospective students, I would say keep an open mind, right? I mean, don't just go by what your immediate circle of people tell you. I think as a youngster, you're at a stage in your life where you can make mistakes and still recover from them. And so you should, just because in the previous year 80% of students went to an institute doesn't mean you should go also. Give it a chance. Open up your mind, and you may be surprised, and you may benefit greatly later on in life.
Fair enough. Great point to stop. And please like, share, subscribe. And if you're coming to IIT Madras, do visit a Heritage Center and drop us a note on what you thought. Thank you.
Bye.